Okay, everybody, we're going to make a start on this webinar. Just conscious that we've only got an hour for it, and many of you have probably come here on your lunch break. So obviously we're here today to talk about our nominations process for our awards event, which isn't that far away really, given that we're already in March and the event is in June this year, so not long to go. So we thought it would be quite helpful to have a session where we could just talk about sharing some tips and some hints about how to write a good nomination, just so that we can give you a bit of a steer to get the best out of your narratives. But also it might help some of you that are maybe thinking about putting in a nomination but not too sure about whether you know confident enough. Hopefully what you might hear today will help you and you know, will encourage you to put in those nominations. It's always a good event, and it's really good for us to be able to celebrate good practice that we've got across our Good Employment Charter network. So the setup for today is that we will have a panel, and on that panel we've got people that have got expertise in either being on our judging panel in the past for the awards, or they've actually been winners as well of some of our awards. So we've got really good knowledge and some good tips that they can share with you this afternoon. And what we'll do is we'll go to each speaker to concentrate on one particular area of the awards categories. And then if you can put your questions that you might have into the chat, we'll pick them up at the end. We've got about 15 minutes towards the end to be able to pick up anything that anybody wants to know a bit more about. Okay, so first of all then I'm going to hand over to Kat, who is our first speaker to talk about the inclusion category.
Thanks, Carol. So hi everyone, I'm Kat Sowden. I'm the Managing Director at Persona in Bury. Persona is an adult social care provider, and we became members of the Charter in 2023. And in 2024 we won the Best for Inclusion. So I suppose this year I'm going to be involved in judging that category, and I thought it'd be useful to talk a little bit about how we approached our submission for inclusion last year, and therefore the sorts of things that I'm going to be interested in as a judge for that category this year. So actually, when we became a member of the Good Employment Charter, as we went on our journey towards membership, inclusion was one of the areas that was flagged to us as something that we maybe needed to consider in a little bit more detail and do a little bit more work around. And that triggered us to do a whole piece of work around inclusive recruitment and completely remodelling our recruitment processes. So I suppose when I'm judging that category this year, what I'll be particularly interested in is organisations who are able to describe having some light bulb moments about their ability to be inclusive and being open and honest with themselves about where they could be better. So that's what I'll be looking for in the first instance is not necessarily have we got lovely policies and procedures that look nice and neat on the shelf, but are we doing the right stuff, and have we got the right ability to see ourselves in the truest sense? So that's really key to me. I think then within that, the journey that you go on, so if you have recognised an area where you feel you want to make a difference around inclusion, whatever that area is, then how have you gone about approaching that? So within the submission, I'd want to see the journey of your approach. So how did you realise that there was something that you needed to maybe think about in a different way? And then how did you approach that task? I'll be looking at to what degree people with lived experience of that particular part of inclusion have been involved or a part of that process. So have they been involved? If they have, to what degree? Have they co-produced? Have they been asked? You know, what level of involvement was there to truly understand, I'm going to say the problem, but what the issue was in enough detail to then come up with you know, a really great solution to that. So I won't be looking for neat policies and procedures, and I won't necessarily be looking for off-the-shelf solutions. I'll be looking to see how an organisation has become self-aware of an issue and how they have then, yes, absolutely used some policies and procedures, but evolved a solution that works for that particular setting, that particular group of people. And learnt from best practice of others, but absolutely made something that feels right in the context of that organisation. And for us, I mean, we started that journey, as I said, when we were still going through the membership process. So we started it a couple of years ago. We didn't go for the Inclusion Award until last year because we needed time for that to bed in. So I'll also be looking for an organisation who can demonstrate that journey, can demonstrate making adjustments along the way. So looking at that solution, checking in on that solution, is that making the right difference? And the key thing for me is impact. So what difference has it made? That so what question. I'm not looking for inputs necessarily. Those are important, but what I'm more interested in is what difference have we actually made with that intervention, and how is that organisation now as a result of having made those interventions? What looks different? And some of that might be quite quantitative in terms of, we've managed to move this statistic from here to here in what we've done. For us, that was about growth in the number of young people and growth in the number of ethnically diverse people who were coming to work for us and being successful through the recruitment process. And we were able to demonstrate that shift. But it's also about that qualitative data about the organisation and what it's like to work there for those different groups of people. So hopefully that captures a little bit about where my focus is going to be, that impact, demonstrating that impact. So I know it's really hard when you're doing new stuff in an organisation, you're giddy and excited because you've come up with a solution and it's brilliant and I want to put in for a nomination for it because I think it's fab. But we need to have had time to see whether that shiny new thing is actually doing what you set out for it to do, and hoping that the submissions that we see this year will be able to demonstrate that. So hopefully, Carol, that gives a bit of a flavour, and I'll pass back to you. Thank you.
No, that was really helpful, and I think you're completely right, Kat. It's about that impact, isn't it? Like you said, making and seeing that difference and how it's changed your organisation as a whole. So that's really come through loud and clear. So that's brilliant. So thank you very much for that. So now I'm going to hand over to Laura Burgess, who is I'll let her introduce herself, but Laura is going to talk us through the financial wellbeing category and just give us some insights in terms of what we might be looking for in terms of strong nomination in this particular category. So over to you then, Laura.
Brilliant. Thanks, Carol. Good to see everyone. Thanks for having me. My name's Laura Burgess. I'm Head of Policy and Research at Resolve Poverty. So hopefully some people on the call have heard of us, but we're a local not-for-profit based in GM who support localities with resolving poverty. So whether that's local authorities, regional government, VCSE sector, or areas of the private sector with their sort of roles and responsibilities in tackling poverty, we do all that sort of stuff. So I'm a judge on the financial wellbeing category, and I'm really pleased to have been asked. So thank you to the Charter for that. I'm just going to talk a little bit about why it's important that, why good practice on financial wellbeing by employers is needed. So unfortunately, some of these stats that I'm going to reel off are slightly depressing, but hopefully it sort of paints a picture of why this category is important and why it's important generally that our employers are prioritising their employees' financial wellbeing. So first of all, just a caveat, I'm just going to talk about child poverty rates. That's not because we only focus on child poverty, but just it's because of a sort of intricacy of how the government record poverty rates across the country in local areas. They don't record all age poverty data. So we tend to use child poverty as a proxy for poverty rates overall in a specific area. But anyway, I'll go on. So poverty rates in Greater Manchester and in the North West are higher than the national average. 9 out of the 10 boroughs of GM have child poverty rates above the national average of 30%. So the national average is around sort of 1 in 3 children in child poverty. But in Manchester, the rate is almost 48%. Oldham, it's over 46%. And Bolton, it's 44%. And we know that nationally poverty is on the rise and is back to pre-pandemic levels. And it's been well over sort of 20 years since the country has seen prolonged period of falling poverty rates. you know, we talk about poverty rates and people often think about people who are out of work, but that really isn't the case. And it's important to sort of talk about on this call that, you know, in work poverty is a real issue. And we know that 63% of children and working age adults who are in poverty live in families where at least one adult works, and that number's on the rise. So in terms of this award, then it's sort of in that context that it's important that employers prioritise financial well-being for their employees, and those figures really just talk about actual poverty, you know, households that are below 60% of median earnings, but there's more people that are struggling financially just than those represented in poverty rates. And so we'd sort of like to see recognition of this by the entries into this award, you know, that people know the context in which their employees are sort of struggling with household finances at the moment. So why is financial well-being important for employers? So the research shows that people struggling with their finances don't always speak up and ask for help. You know, stigma is a big problem, particularly with regards to things like claiming benefits and the things that people are entitled to from the state. You probably all have heard of the £23 billion of unclaimed benefits each year that people aren't claiming. And we know that often people who are struggling with their finances won't go to places like the council. They won't go to a council hub and ask for help, but they often feel more comfortable in trusted settings, you know, in doctors, in sort of NHS agencies, children's schools, etc., and workplaces can be somewhere where they might feel a little bit better in opening up to help as well. So in terms of the work we do, then we're really keen to support the private sector in supporting employees experiencing poverty and financial hardship. That's why we're involved in the Greater Manchester Living Wage campaign, and we're really pleased that over the sort of last 8 years or so, we've gone from a handful of living wage employers in GM to now over 800 across the city region. But it's important to say that it isn't just wages that contribute to financial well-being at work. You know, good, and I don't need to tell anybody on this call because you're all signed up to the Good Employment Charter, but good work is about supporting employees beyond their pay, you know, decent annual leave, sick pay from day one, carers leaves, decent pension, etc. So it's sort of all of those things. It isn't just pay. So in terms of then financial well-being and what we're really looking for is, first of all, that employers are considering their workforce and tailoring the financial well-being offer to their workforce demographic. So, you know, if a organisation has got a really young workforce, they might need some more advice about things like debt, payday loans, sort of, you know, costs, living costs that are getting on top of them versus an older workforce that might be considering planning for retirement. That's not to say that young people shouldn't plan for retirement and shouldn't focus on a pension, but I would really like to see that workplaces have considered their workforce and considered who is going to benefit from this financial well-being. Also accessibility, you know, it's a bit of a changing world, and we were just talking about this on the call just before everybody else joined about the sort of the impact of COVID's had on workplaces and workplace cultures, you know, so we need to make sure that financial well-being is accessible. Is it accessible to remote workers? Is it accessible to people who are sort of working online? Can they come to an office and see somebody if they need to? That kind of thing. But just a few examples, and I don't think any of these will be sort of a shock to anyone, but things that workplaces can do then to sort of support financial well-being. So access to financial advice is a really key one. So we know that a lot of NHS services have collaborated with citizens advice officers in their local area to be able to set up meetings for their employees, so not for patients and things, but as an employer for their employees to seek say a 1-hour consultation on a bit of a financial health check. So that's something that employees can offer, and that's something that can really be done in person, on the phone, online. That's something that can be really accessible. Saving through credit unions is a really big one. That's a really good thing for employers to offer for their workforce, so that they can save sort of through their pay slip and through a credit union. You know, access to fair and affordable saving and loans, and then other sort of loan schemes. So travel passes, you know, if employers can offer a loan for somebody to be able to buy a sort of 6-month or an annual travel pass, which are often cheaper than buying them weekly or daily, and then they sort of pay that back through their wages, is another good sort of financial wellbeing offer, cycle to work schemes, all those kind of things. And I just wanted to just sort of end on the point that whilst it is obviously the right thing to do for employees who are struggling in a sort of post-COVID, post-cost of living crisis world where costs are incredibly high, it does make good business sense as well. So there's research that shows that businesses lose productivity due to employees' financial well-being being poor and people worrying about it, and around 1 in 4 employees themselves say that financial concerns have affected their ability to do their job. So it isn't just a sort of totally selfless act for employers to consider financial well-being, but it is important for the sort of for productivity of the organisation as well. So I hope that's given you a bit of a highlight there, but I'm happy to answer questions at the end. Thanks.
That's great. Thanks, Laura. That's really interesting. Again, it comes back about that impact again, doesn't it? About making sure that whatever you do is impacting the workforce. And you just kind of mentioned there about alluded to the fact that productivity is one of the things that people can demonstrate as being improved as a result of financial health and wellbeing. So that's really good. So now we're going to move on to John Quintin-Barber, who will talk about the cultural change category. So a new category for us this year, but we thought it was an important one as well, because obviously lots of organisations have had lots of change. So yes, I'll hand over to you, John.
Thank you, Carol, and hello everybody. Can't see you, but good to be present with you on the Zoom. We were saying to Ian earlier, it's 5 years since the pandemic. It's 5 years this month since we all got into this new world of remoteness. Some of us are used to it now, some of us are still getting used to it, but delighted to be here. We're a friend and supporter of the Charter since the year dot, I think, and a member for the last couple of years, and we wouldn't have it any other way. I'm John Quintin-Barber. I founded Social, which is a PR, marketing, communications agency in 2013. And for the first 4 years, it was about survival. As an entrepreneur, it's all about pizzas and ice cream and survival, as I call it, in the 4 years. And then after 4 years, I had about 15 employees. I thought, bloody hell, we need to sort culture out here because it's a little bit, So I'm delighted to be a judge and being asked to be judged on the best for cultural change. And when I mean that, I think all businesses, all organisations go through cycles of culture change. If you're sat here now on this call looking at this category, you're probably thinking the same. And culture change is really important. And it is about culture change. And this award is about demonstrating change, not just the fact that you've got a great culture, which hopefully you have. So it's about the change. So I'll come on to 4 areas that I think will be really important for you to focus on as you're putting this application together. But just very briefly about Social, about our own journey, and probably kind of gives you an idea of why I'm delighted at being asked to this, because I've cocked it up a couple of times as an agency owner. I've been on my own journey, and it was a great culture at Social for probably 10 of the 12 years that we've existed. And then we managed COVID successfully, and then we had a few areas where I made some bad decisions, and that combined with Liz Truss coming along and talking about the budget, and our business went like that, and we had to restructure. And a restructure was a poignant point in our agency life, and these are points where some businesses will find that cultural change has to happen post restructure. So 2 years ago, I was faced with having to rebuild a culture that had been fractured by some decisions I made, which I take full responsibility for, and because of some of the financial challenges in the world. So I want to put that out there because, no business is perfect. And I've been on my own journey for the last 2 years, and I'm delighted to say, the culture now is back to where we need it to be. And we've implemented quite a few things. So if you're going to enter this award, I think there are 4 areas you need to be really focused on. One is a clear rationale for change. What problem or challenge has caused you to change the culture, and what are you trying to resolve? Leadership and commitment. So it's all around the leadership around this. So are senior leaders actively driving this change, and how can you demonstrate that? Have you been transparent in communications? Can you demonstrate that? And accountable throughout the whole process? Is it being top down? Is it being bottom up? How's it being shaped and pulled together? And what about colleague involvement and buy-in? Have there been extensive consultations? Have you in adapting and shaping this new culture? Have you fostered an open dialogue and feedback loops? And this is really important, are there any testimonials you can provide from current employees or experiences that would really give me and fellow judges a kind of real sense that this is a real journey of being on. Don't be shy of it being hard-hitting and gritty, because that's what it needs to be. It needs to be honest and authentic and gritty. We're not looking for how many awards you've won because you've got a great culture. We're looking for the actual sense of change and what it really meant and the authenticity around that. And the fourth point is the actions and the initiatives. So what programs, we talk about policies, what have you implemented as a result of this culture change, if any? Are they symbolic, or are they actually impacting daily work? And these might include, flexible working, enhanced flexible working, DEI, and I'm going to champion that because the winds from across the Atlantic are trying to unchampion that. I'm championing that, and the DEI is so important. And then maybe perhaps performance management systems and other things. So think about it as a kind of a four-point route: clear rationale for change, clear rationale for change, leadership commitment, employee involvement, and concrete actions and initiatives. Authentic, gritty, tell the story, show us, and we'll be kind to you. That's what I've got to say.
That's really helpful. Thanks, John. I think you're absolutely right about that being authentic, because with all the nominations, what we want is to get a sense of what that organisation is like to work within as well. So it's really powerful when people do send testimonials, like you say, and that gritty evidence as well, because it just brings it to life rather than it just being words on a page. And I guess with this category as well, there's a real opportunity for people to think about innovation as well, isn't there? Because it is quite a big challenge, I guess, that people will have been having to kind of work through, and not necessarily something that's been done overnight, but has taken some time to kind of work through as well. So I think this is a really exciting one that we've introduced this year. So thank you for that. It's really helpful, and hopefully we'll have some questions towards the end. Can I just encourage people that if you do have any questions, if you can try and get them into the chat so that we can make sure we can cover them at the end. There's not many in there at the moment, so don't feel like you have to save them all and put them in as a flurry towards the end. You can keep drip feeding them through, and then we'll pick them up in a short while. So now I'm going to hand over to Ian, who's going to talk about the award for leadership this year, which again is another new category. So Ian, over to you.
Thanks very much, Carol. Good afternoon, everyone. Great to see you. For those who don't know me, I'm Ian McCarthy. I'm the director of the Charter. The awards every year give us an opportunity to celebrate, and it is the best of the best. Don't hide your lights under bushels here. You're already engaged with the Charter as a supporter or a member, so you've already made a commitment, or you've gone through the assessment process. So we know you're good. But we also know that there's some great stuff right across the network. And just because perhaps you've not moved from supporter to member yet, doesn't mean to say that you haven't got absolute brilliance in some areas of practice. And please do not be retiring about putting yourself forward for these awards. They really do make an impact, not just for you. And I'm sure people like Kat and John, who have received awards, recognize the benefits, not just for the staff and morale, but business benefits that can be accrued by winning awards like this. But also the fact that it really does help us spread the message. And I've popped in the chat already a little video that we made, and we do for all shortlisted employers, of Persona Care last year, just to show you that the sort of practice that we come across through these awards. So yeah, I should now talk about the leadership one, because that's what Carol asked me to do. Sorry about that, Carol. So the leadership category isn't new, but it's the first time we've opened it up for nominations. Previously, we've used our own network and our own intelligence to award this leadership award. Now, I think John's already kind of touched on this, but leadership is absolutely fundamental to good employment. If you don't have good leadership, the chances are you're not going to be a good employer. So there's good leadership all the way across our network. So again, we're looking for the best of the best here. And the sorts of things that I think we're looking for in nominations, and these are words that have already been used, but authenticity will be so important that we can demonstrate that the leaders that you're nominating are authentic, because the authenticity brings trust, and we won't go anywhere without trust in a workplace, and we certainly won't build a good employment culture without trust at its heart. So authentic leadership, how you can demonstrate the authenticity of the leader that you're nominating. And part of that authenticity comes from communication styles. If we haven't got the communications right, if we can't inspire our colleagues, if we can't inspire our organizations to share the vision of where we're going, then that will be difficult. So communications is absolutely fundamental. So again, if you can demonstrate innovation around communication styles, or the way in which a leader or a leadership team has communicated to and across the organization to inspire others, that would be fantastic. I think part of that authenticity also comes from being empathetic and humble. I think those are qualities that we would be looking for in a leader that develops an inclusive style. Again, picking up on John's point about equality, diversity, and inclusion, or whichever way we want to say those words. Inclusion is absolutely crucial to an effective leader who understands and is empathetic across all domains, and can lead all sorts of cultures and various people as we move through the organization. And culture is so important. Culture is vital, and it will reflect a little bit on the cultural change category, undoubtedly. But if there's an individual who has led that cultural change, who is stuck to their values, as not only stuck to their values, but has behaviors and shows behaviors that match those values. I mean, living the values, we've all got values stuck on the wall probably, but then how do we actually live them? And can we actually see in our leaders those behavioral traits that reflect those values and that culture? And that's how you develop the culture. And all of this leads to, I think, being able to empower your teams. Without empowerment, to allow others to grow and develop, to have their heads, to be their full selves at the workplace. Now that takes clever and careful leadership, so that you're providing that platform for employees to show their best. I think, moreover, we always want to see impact in all of these categories. We want to see the change that's being made. So when you're thinking about the leader that you want to nominate, think about the impact that they've had, the journey that perhaps the organization's been on under their leadership. And if possible, and this goes for every category actually, try and demonstrate not just the story, because the story is important and we like stories. Stories actually matter when it comes to using the videos and taking the case studies further. But we also need to see some hard numbers probably in this. So what physical change, and Kat made this point about the qualitative and quantitative approaches that we can take, and how we can submit that in a application or a nomination. We also like innovation. If we've seen stuff and yeah, okay, that's great, it's good, but we've seen it before, you're not going to catch the eye of the judges or those who are going to be shortlisting. So if you can think of something that's innovative, that's happened, not just in the leadership category, but right across the other categories, I think that makes a difference to the nominations. We know this is difficult. No, it's not easy, but we've got to be fair in terms of the word limit that we give you all. And it is just words. We don't want videos and we don't want other forms at this stage. If shortlisted, then by all means, we will take videos and other pieces of media to support your application or your nomination. But at this stage, it is just the words and the word count that you're going to have to work with. So we understand that's not easy, and this is why we ran this today. And also, I think it is worthwhile having a look at our YouTube channel, where I've pointed you already to Persona's entry last year, but there are lots of different entries from previous years also on the website who have been shortlisted, and that should give you some insight into what makes a successful nomination. And just finally, Carol, because I know we've both been doing this over the last week or so, we have podcasts that are coming. One's released today. I think it's on cultural change with the Chief Fire Officer. Next week, there will be one released on Monday around financial well-being. And then there'll be one on inclusion. So again, these podcasts, Good Employment Chatter, if you haven't followed our podcasts already, you will find hopefully quite inspirational in terms of the sorts of things that employers can do in these particular categories. In terms of leadership, we've got a whole series of podcasts on leadership as well. I think it was series 3 or 4 of the podcast. And again, hopefully they will provide some inspiration for you. Carol, thank you. Back to you.
No, that was good. And we obviously do think alike, because I was going to mention the podcasts as well. It's good. But I think that they will certainly hopefully trigger people's thinking around good employment practice, and maybe will enlighten ideas for people about what they might want to put in a nominations category as well. So yeah, do listen to the podcast and the website. We've got blogs on there as well, and like Ian has said, look at some of the past nominations winners from our events as well. So lots of information out there that should inspire you and enable you to put a really strong award nomination submission in. So we're running a little bit ahead of time now. So I am just going to see if anybody has got any questions. Just trying to find the tab now. It's all different on here. Oh, strange screen there then. Are there any of our panel want to say as well, having kind of heard everybody speak? Is there anything that wants to pick up that they didn't pick up in what they said?
No, not top of my head. There are some questions though, Carol. Can you see the questions?
I was just going to throw in one thing that might occur to me if I wasn't as involved with the charter would be who can make a nomination, particularly like the leader one that Ian's just talked about, because well, can the leader make the nomination for themselves? Is that the done thing? Is it not? Do you know what I mean? Does an organisation nominate itself, or have we got organisations sat there waiting for somebody else to nominate them? So it might just be useful just to talk about that a little bit.
Yeah, I think if a leader believes that they deserve the award, by all means nominate themselves. If it's good practice, by all means. I think that's absolutely fine. I'm pretty certain, and we have had a number of entries already in that category. It seems to be really popular, and it's been mainly by employees who have nominated the leader or leadership team.
Yeah. We've got a question. We've got a few questions in here now. So, Laura, I've got a question for you about the success of financial wellbeing programs. So how do we measure and present the success of financial wellbeing programs in a way that would impress the judges? So is there anything in particular in terms of measurements that you would be looking for financial wellbeing?
Yeah, so I think with measuring these kind of things, it needs to be both quantitative. Gosh, I'll put my teeth back in. Quantitative and qualitative. I don't even think I've said that right. And I'm a head of research. Gosh, this isn't good, is it? Basically, what I mean by that is we're looking at data. You know, we're looking at data metrics. I mean, this is just my view, and I'm conscious I am one of a panel of judges, but I would be looking at sort of data metrics to indicate that these measures are successful over time. So, how many people have they helped? How have they helped them? Have they helped in monetary terms? Have they helped in other ways? But also by looking at sort of the experience of the employees, you know, have you done sort of case studies on how it's helped? Are employees able to feed that back? It might be anonymous, you know, it can be anonymous. It's a difficult topic for a lot of people to talk about. So, you know, but are people able to say that it's improved their financial well-being, it's improved their mental health, it's improved their sort of household situation? So we'll be looking at sort of measuring it in a number of ways, but I think, yeah, just making sure that we're using like a variety of metrics as well.
Yeah, that's really good. And also, this isn't a question that I'm surprised to see, but one about how do small organisations compete versus larger organisations? So this is a question for any of our panel, really. You know, our awards are open and inclusive to all sizes of sectors of organisations, but I guess that some small organisations might feel a little bit intimidated, but they shouldn't do. Are there any words of encouragement that any of our panel members want to give to smaller organisations?
I mean, last year we introduced large and small categories across all 3 open categories, and it's difficult where to draw the line. You know, the old way of an SME definition was 250 staff. We think that's too big. So we categorize large as 100, so small is 100 or less employees. Appreciate there's lots of micros in the economy as well and in our network. But I think from our experience from previous years, judges understand that. Judges understand that the resources from a larger organization compared to that available to a smaller organization do vary, but the impact, again, I'll go back to it, if we can demonstrate the impact, no matter the scale of the organization, to the staff and the organization moving forward, whether that be how it's been successful in its productivity or its profitability, I think that's the important part. The impact is really important, no matter the scale.
Can I just add to that? I think it's a great point. I think it is relative, isn't it? I think it's how best you tell your story. So as a judge, you know, will I be looking? One of my first things won't be looking for the size of the organisation. One of the things I'll be looking for is actually the impact. So yeah, absolutely impact. So I don't think you should feel disadvantaged because you're a small micro business as opposed to a larger business. And yes, you might have more resources as a larger business, but I actually think if you're a smaller business and a micro business, to actually overcome some of these challenges, I would arguably say it could be even more challenging for you. So tell your story, articulate it, and bring the authenticity into it. That's what I'd say.
Yeah.
To be honest, John, that's also where we find the innovation, because they have, you know, smaller organizations haven't got the big corporate HR department that they can call upon to deal with an issue. So that's where innovation comes.
Yeah. I've got another question here as well. So, John, this might be well directed at you. In terms of cultural change, would it be okay for an employer to submit something that's a recent initiative? Can that still be a strong contender? Or is it just long-term cultural change that would be looked at?
No, my word. It depends how you define long-term. I think anything that's an initiative that's actually initiated change and you can demonstrate the positive impact of that change, in my book, and I'm only one of 3 fellow judges, I think I'd be looking at that as favourably. So it doesn't really, for me, I won't be looking at, you know, you can demonstrate that this has happened over 2 years and here's all the results. It's actually, you know, you could be at the tail end of it, you know, but there could be there could be things that you can demonstrate along the way. So yeah, don't get caught up on that. I'd say definitely, again, tell your story, show us the results, show us what changed, and I'm really keen. I'm really focused on what was a challenge. Really focusing on that challenge. Tell that story. I know you've got a word count, so use it effectively and efficiently, but tell the story in a way that showed me and fellow judges that, my God, might even make me cringe when I read the initial challenge, because we've all been there, but the output, the finish, the result, amazing. Yeah, so.
Yeah, no, that's really good. Would there, from any of our panel members, would there be any kind of word of advice in terms of like common mistakes to avoid in terms of submitting an awards nomination? Are there things that you see quite often that are common mistakes that we should be making our audience aware of and to avoid?
I think for me, it comes back to talking exclusively about inputs rather than what difference any of that. You can have a whole raft of inputs, but if they're not making a difference. So then there's a question in the chat about policies and training. Well, there's no point telling me you've sent all your staff on a piece of inclusion training if you can't tell me why you did it and what difference it's made by doing it. So I think it's, yeah, those bit inputs are important, but don't forget to tell us why you did it and what the outcome of that was.
Yeah, that's important, isn't it? It's that outcome that's most important, isn't it? Yeah, that's going to be really good.
I think also, Carol, I mean, we've been doing this 3 years now.
Mm-hmm.
This is the 4th time. Use your word limit and tell the story as best you can. We've had a number of nominations that have almost just assumed we know things, but actually we've got to be fair and actually just judge on what's presented to us. So make sure that you tell the full story in the word limit that you've got.
Yeah, it's making the most of that, isn't it?
Yeah, I was just going to say, Carol, as well, I haven't judged the awards before, so I'm really looking forward to, but I think that's right, not assuming that we know lots of things, and actually, I think John mentioned before about telling the story and tailoring it to the organisation, I'd be really keen to look for that sort of stuff. It's a bit like when you're applying for a job, isn't it? You've got to really sell yourself. So as a newbie judge, that's what I'll be sort of looking for.
Yeah. And it'll be good as well to see some things that are perhaps different from like sectoral norms as well, where people are doing something that's a little bit, just completely aside from what others might be doing in their sector, where there are challenges in certain sectors, but people might have overcome them. So it'll be interesting to see we're getting nominations around those kinds of challenges as well, sectoral challenges and any changes that have been made.
Sorry, Carol, I'd also add, test it with your colleagues. There's nothing better than actually testing what you're writing with your colleagues to ensure that it is right, it is authentic. Because I'm sure this will never happen, but I'm sure the scenario where you're submitting something and then your colleagues are looking at it and going, "Oh, that's not what we're about. That's not true. We don't recognise that." So, maybe use a space and time in your corporate calendar or your just to maybe have a session with colleagues, select number of colleagues, saying, "We're going to enter this. This is what our application says. Can you enhance it? Because actually we find, if there's one person penning it, or maybe 2 or 3, just share it, because you'll get proper input and proper impact from people you work with who will test it and challenge it. And
that's a really good idea. And also, it might be where there's organisations that are sitting on the fence a little bit about whether to put a nomination in or not. If they make their colleagues aware of the nominations process, they might actually be surprised that responses they get from the workforce to say, actually, we're good at this and we should be putting a nomination in that particular category. I think that would be, quite a good way of testing some of the work practices as well. Ian, you were going to say something then?
Yeah, I mean, John makes a really good point. Employee voice is really important in all of this. I think that's to have that fed through. And I was going to say something maybe a little bit pejorative, but if you're a larger organization there and your public affairs team gets hold of this, please make sure that it is grounded in reality rather than PR spin, because occasionally we do get that kind of entry in, and it whilst it's very professional and competent, it doesn't feel genuine. So make sure that the entry is grounded in reality. That would be my plea.
Yeah, you want it so that the rest of the colleagues actually identify with that organisation, can recognise themselves. So yeah, that's really another good point. So I think we've almost kind of reached the end of the questions. So I think we've just got some points to finish up on. One of the things, just to remind people, that the nominations do close on the 21st of March. So still a little while before the closing date. And hopefully this session has been helpful for everybody to get some thoughts and ideas as to what to put in those nominations. You can always kind of come back to any of us in the team if you've got any further questions about the actual awards themselves, or go onto our website as well. We've got our awards microsite, and we've got FAQs on there as well. So there's lots of information. You know, so please, you know, do use all of those resources. And yeah, I'm obviously remember that date of the 21st of March. It's going to be a tight turnaround because obviously we've got judging to do between then and the 12th of June. As I said, it's not far away. And no doubt we'll start getting the questions in very soon about what people are wearing as well. That's always the biggest question we get. So yeah. So if anybody else, if anyone's not got anything else to add, I think we can finish off a tiny bit earlier and people get a little bit of their afternoon back or their lunchtime back.
Just one thing, Hal, just one thing I think.
Yeah. Make
it a strong intro. Make it a very strong intro. The introduction is really important. Catch our attention. Yeah. And that is a tip for anything, isn't it? So
yeah, it's really good. Yeah. So you want the impact from the beginning, don't you? Right, you want
to go, my God, wow, oof, right from the beginning. Because we're human and we go, whoa, you know, that's great, rather than a load of stats at the beginning. We'll be like, okay, you want to get us right at the beginning, tell that story, bang it. Yeah. I think as well, another thing that I was just reflecting on, when people come in to talk about their nomination, if they're shortlisted and they come in to present, one of the other things is about making sure you have people that are very passionate about the nomination as well, that are speaking to it, you know, that understand it, so that they can respond in the best way to the questions that might be asked by the judging panel as well. Because that passion does come through if people believe in it and, you know, really want to kind of show it off and showcase that good practice, then that enthusiasm is precious, really. So yeah, just think about anybody that might be coming forward. Anything else that anybody wants to add?
Just thank everybody for the time, and particularly the judges. You're going to have a really good time with it.
You're going to love it.
I'm really looking forward to it. Thank you.
It's going to have to be a difficult time. So yeah, so thank you, Kat, Laura and John. It's been really good of you to give up your time and for you to agree to be on our judging panel. And you know you're going to have a headache. So so yeah, get plenty of rest beforehand. Okay, everybody, thanks for coming on the webinar, and enjoy the rest of your afternoons. Okay, see you soon.
Thanks, Carol.